Okay, this might be a lengthier video as you may imagine, but I'll try to keep it as short as possible. So I have some skin ideas for Heroes of the Storm, but this time, compared to the previous 2 or 3 times when I made these skin videos, I don't have any example of my own other than results which I could find on Google. But I think some of them are good enough. So the first idea for skin is Archmage kel'thuzad, his World of Warcraft form that you get to see, or you got to see. I'm not sure, I don't play World of Warcraft, the newer one at least, or anything post Cataclysm. So it maybe isn't available anymore, but here. What about this skin for kel'thuzad? You know? I don't know how its hitbox will be done because kel'thuzad is quite massive as a lich versus the human, which isn't as much. But I think, I mean, it would be a troublesome skin to try and put in. But the idea is out there. Out there. I think it could be done and it could be a skin because I think to just have recolors of the basic one and then the Star-Lord, which I personally don't like at all, I think kel'thuzad could use some more skins. So I'm starting off with those. Alright, next up is Necromancer kel'thuzad. So, I don't know if I can... Oh no, it reset. I had one found, but... Okay, well, I think this will do. Right, it's good. I mean, it's from a different game, but it looks like the one in in Warcraft will, right? Something like this. Just a basic Necromancer, you know, before he was turned into a Lich. Which I think could be probably as problematic as the human one, but it also means that if they would manage to put in one, the other wouldn't be as much of a problem concerning the hitboxes and such, and the human size. Or the size of the model. Alright, next up, level 80 Transmog Necromancer, but that's... I scrapped that one because it was sort of an idea where he would look something... He would have some kind of armor. It would be a reference to World of Warcraft, but... You know, I scrapped it in the end, so don't mind that one. I actually managed to forget to erase it from the list. Alright. Alright, so just so you can know that I'm not joking here. So that's going off the list. Alright, Master Lich. That will be just you know how many of the basic skins back in the day of Heroes of the Storm 1 had a Master skin, which you got only, or which was made available only if you got to a certain level. Some of the heroes kept these skins and others, you know, I don't know if others have an equivalent of the Master skin, or if it's just a leftover thing for the older skins. So, Master Lich will be just like a Master version of the regular kel'thuzad, where he, instead of his hands, will be using a staff. And he'd have some, you know, differences in the armor and the visuals. And now for the second to last skin idea. You know, I actually thought about this today in the morning. All of this has been written over the course of the past 8 days, but this has been an idea I got in the morning. You know the game Dance Dance Revolution, right? I think that the Dance Dance Revolution is, you know, it's a game for where you have to be fast, where you have to be twitchy, and I think Tracer is that kind of a character which could probably work well, but I don't know how copyright would be handled in that sense. So I can imagine like a skin for a Dance Dance Revolution Tracer or whatever you want to call it. They could just call it because of copyright reasons like Dance Star Tracer or something. But I don't have an idea of what would it look like. Probably something like bright colors and codes for dancing and stuff like that. So anyway, closing that tab. That brings us to the last skin. Janitor Leoric. I wasn't aware that this skin was actually... At first I thought it was an original idea that I got from someone who I talked with. A random person in a quick match, but he brought my attention to this skin. And actually someone of Asian origin, or at least someone who uses Asian language, actually went ahead and it sort of does look like what I imagine it would be. Other than this, you know, the entomb, which I didn't have an idea about at all, but the rest is pretty much well thought out, and it's an amazing concept, and it would be very easy to, well, easy. I don't know how difficult is it to make a skin, But if you have the idea, if you have the concept, it wouldn't be that difficult to put it together, would it? I mean, it's a great idea, and as some have said, I don't even play Leoric and I would buy this game because it's just great. Great humor, great value, and you know, it would work, I think. And many others do as well, as you can probably guess by this number here and this number there. So anyway, back to the list, and here go the oh, here's one other section before gameplay related things. So the first thing is, I imagine, and this is not just a thing concerning Heroes of the Storm, I imagine that Blizzard, well, imagine, other than Heroes of the Storm, and partially as of the recent months StarCraft, there has been very little visual customization in Blizzard games. And also aside from Diablo, right, and World of Warcraft. So it's more like a, okay, to rephrase that argument, Hearthstone and Heroes of the Storm could use some visual customization. Heroes of the Storm has visual customization for heroes, I get that, for banners, for sprays and whatever. But imagine if the maps could be in different seasons. You know, like, they would have to keep the design aspects, because I imagine that if Alterac suddenly didn't have that, well, not line, but that muddy area next to the top and bottom lanes, which makes it not as much of a difficulty, but it makes it more difficult for gankers to gank those lanes, it would probably, you know, shift like the balance of the map, or the idea of the map. So just a visual change. Imagine like Alterac in spring or Dragonshire in winter. I for one think Dragonshire in winter would be amazing, especially with the dragon and, you know, the snowy keeps and whatever. Or Braxis in, I don't know, but Braxis probably wouldn't have a summer, right? Because it's on a distant planet with a lot of Zerg. Looks rocky, doesn't have any plants. Well, you get the idea. On some maps it would be possible, on some it wouldn't. Even then, Braxis is in daytime. Perhaps it could be nighttime, you know? It could be somehow sneaked into the maps. And it would, I wouldn't say spice up, but it would add some sort of variety feeling. Because if you play the same map over and over and over, eventually the visuals get tiresome. And I'm not saying this way they wouldn't. It would just slow down the process, you know? Maybe maybe for all the maps, if things like nighttime and such would be snuck in. And now, for the gameplay part. Some of these are side notes, some of these are just things that aren't finished yet, but I'll try and say what I have written down here in a way that can be digested by someone who doesn't see the inside of my head. That is, the viewer. So, I think that playing a tank, despite it being a very influential role in team fights and in the overall course of the game, tank play, I'm not, right now that I think of it, I'm not sure if it's more or less boring than the support, but I think tank is the most boring role. I would say support is a bit more exciting than that. And I think it's partly because tanks usually don't have anything to keep their focus on. Other than, and I think I can speak for how a tank plays and what do they have to focus on, because I played a lot of Arthas, I played a lot of Anubarak, recently tried Stitches, Joanna, and other tanks. Also Artanis, but that's not really a tank, he's like a hybrid. Like a tank has to keep a focus at all times at positioning of enemies, at positioning of allies, and where he should be standing. But that's speaking for the part of team fights. Aside from team fights, in laning phase, in whatever else, it's boring to play a tank. You always do the same thing over. And I'm not saying you don't do that with damagers or supports or whatever. I'm saying a tank playstyle is very straightforward. There's nothing to keep you focused onto something else. For many tanks. For some there is, but for many there isn't. You know, like some sort of quest on level 1, which they can focus on. You know, Arthas has a quest at level 1, I think number of quests. He has Frostmourne or the Frost Presence, and they're perfect because landing skill shots as Arthas actually matters. you get rewarded. You know, you progress, and your route, which is very crucial to playing Arthas and to winning a game and successfully keeping enemies at bay, you get rewarded for landing those hits with it, for routing those enemies, and for protecting your team, which I feel a lot of the time doesn't feel rewarding when you play as a tank. You know, at least this way, that's some sort of a consolidation prize, because at least you get rewarded by the system, if not by the teammates saying thanks. You kept those free damage dealers away damage. You kept those free enemies away from me, and I could kill the two that were separated because you were keeping those free away, which Arthas can do. Very frequently I managed to get the attention of free enemies and have the rest of the team focus on the remaining two. At times I died, but more often than not I got away with like a sliver of health thanks to Ghoul Army and such. So, long story short, I think some sort of quest that would reward the tank play, landing skill shots and like absorbing damage and whatever, could improve the tank gameplay. Wouldn't be as boring, because a lot of the time when I play a tank, it's boring. You don't do a lot of damage, that's point A. And don't get me started on Diablo, that's not a tank, because his playstyle is focused around displacing himself and an enemy. If you displace yourself, you don't stand in the way of skill shots aimed at the backline, you're not a tank anymore. You have just a lot of health, and you're trying to lock down someone, but you're not a tank. No. Alright, never mind that rant at the end. So here I have some examples, something to keep them focused and reward them for actually, you know, positioning well or whatever. An example like Anubarak could have Impale, which is sketchy to hit very often, so I think that's not the best idea, but like damage absorbed with W shield, you know? Eating skill shots and whatever. That could be rewarding. But I don't know if, like, what could the quest give? Lower cooldown would make it too good, larger amount absorbed as well. So I haven't thought out the balancing aspect, but you know what, I think something like that could help, but I don't know how could it be put in. Next up, I think despite specialists being focused onto most of the time doing one thing, you know, they're specially focused onto doing one thing really well, and they fall off in other aspects. I think many of these specialists are focused onto doing siege damage and destroying buildings, but on the flip side, they don't have a way to fix buildings. Like, Mule is, if I'm not mistaken, exclusively reserved for Abathur, and why is that? I'm not saying every specialist should have a Mule, but maybe they could have something themed for them that could help restore health of a building. Not that strong, just something that, so that they would have an option of a counterplay against like strong push. I know one counterplay to strong push, and just someone who just has tunnel vision onto that keep or that tower, is to just kill them. But then comes in someone like Murky, and unless you have a Zeratul or a Nova or whoever, you're probably not gonna destroy that egg, that's point A. And you're probably not gonna kill Murky even if you destroy the egg, because he has a bubble and he can just stay around the keep for 15 seconds, put down another egg, and start chugging away at it again. He eventually will wear down the health of whoever is trying to destroy the pufferfish over and over. You know, so it's... I'm not saying he's that good, but I'm saying there's no counterplay to it right now, and if more heroes like Murky are released... Vikings aren't an example of that, they're not that good in push. They're just there for experience soaking. Like, if there's more heroes like Murky, which have just throwaway lives... There sort of is, there's a Diva, but Diva is a tank, she doesn't push very often, so... Anyway, if there's more heroes like Murky, it could be a serious issue, and I think some of these examples are actually very reasonable. In my opinion. Maybe they're not, but I would say they maybe are. So, for example, Zagar's Creep, to have a talent which restores health to nearby friendly buildings, and the amount it would restore would increase over the course of the game, and it would start off really slow, you know, but it would be there. Like 10 health per second on a keep, that's totally fine, because it doesn't mean like the keep is gonna get tons of health back in very short time. It means that if you manage to hold that area for long enough, the building is gonna be fixed. It's gonna... you will be rewarded for actually defending it. Right? Or like a talent for Nazebo that he can put a spirit over a building, that whenever he gains a stack of voodoo ritual, the building has 1% of its total health pool restored. I went for 1% there because there you actually have to do something. You have to get a stack. You have to be proactive versus putting down a creep tumor. And I think 1% on a building is not that high. It's like one basic attack, you know, but it would still be kind of rewarding. And it would also add this flavor to a specialist that any specialist could kind of help get the core at least some health back. And if you manage to defend like for 10 extra minutes, the core would get back a substantial amount of health if you keep on successfully defending. And you know, a specialist would be a specialist at not only doing damage but also you know, healing it, quote unquote, because we're talking buildings here. Or talent for Asmodan, that blah blah blah. You get the idea. There's some ideas, some are flawed. Some I think are reasonable, like the Zagara creep and such, so you get the idea, I hope. There's also a side note which doesn't concern any tank play or whatever. I think I've played Junkrat and I think it's gonna be my favorite hero because playing him is fun. And I think one problem is that Junkrat's Total Mayhem, the passive that when he dies he drops grenades which explode, they have a really small area. I think they went for the conversion from Overwatch, where the grenades have a very small area of effect once they fall and explode. But the problem is that in Overwatch, some enemies tend to get really close and the grenades can punish them because of that. But Heroes of the Storm, there's some attack range, so even melee heroes very often won't get hit by those grenades. Even if they'll be like standing very close to Junkrat, they can just, there's a explosion delay, and they can just walk away. They're fast enough to not get hit by it, even if they're standing body close to him. So like lowering its damage and increasing its area, perhaps? Which should buff the other ultimate, the Rocket Ride, but you know, very often Rocket Ride's Total Mayhem trigger doesn't hit the target anyway. It's like right now, you either hit someone with all of the Total Mayhem grenades, bringing them down to 20% health, which is devastating in a fight, or you don't hit anyone at all and it doesn't matter. So it's like, to make it do at least like a little bit of damage. You know, decrease the damage but like increase the explosion size, I think is reasonable. Now the Kerrigan problem. That was sort of resolved, but I haven't played against many Kerrigans, or I haven't played as a Kerrigan much after the nerf. Before it I did, and the shield generation was crazy. And I tried to define what was the problem of it, and I think they understood it. That the talent at 16, where you have shorter shield lifespan, but you generate much more shield, much more, like 10% may not seem like a huge amount, but Kerrigan was almost unkillable unless you had 3 assassins who were locking her down and doing damage. So, like, that they decreased it is great, and it seems Kerrigan problem was resolved. The problem being shield generation. And there's one nitpick here. Have you had a look at the roster of Heroes of the Storm? And have you had a look at what is each hero classified as? Why the hell is Hammer a ranged specialist? Like, Hammer used to be a ranged assassin, which fits probably better, because Hammer can just assassinate someone from far away. Which, you know, isn't that unusual, because there are assassins which kill you from far away. Nova, for example, she doesn't kill you from that far away, but she can. And Hammer is all about the can from afar, but doesn't have to. She can go up close. She can chase with, you know, the Nitro Boost, or whatever it's called. So, like, I would say that Hammer is more of a multi-class hero at this point. She's A, a specialist, because she can do a lot of damage to buildings if left unchallenged, but also B, she's an assassin, where if left unchallenged, she can do a ton of damage to enemy heroes. I might be wrong on this one, but I think it's a great opportunity to expand the multi-class section, so that Varian is not the only one there, and also Varian is on this list as well. So, like, here's my reasoning. Hammer is more like a multi-class hero at this point, where she can either do massive damage to structures or devastate an enemy from afar. Sure, that is the specialty, to attack from afar, but her specialty is not only to attack from afar, but also do massive damage to heroes and the like, you know? And she also has some crowd control tools. She doesn't have the usual tools of a specialist, which are either throwaway damage, like Banelings, Demon Warriors of Asmodan, or turrets of the Goblin, Gazlo, or zombies of Nazebo. But she, she does have the assassin aspect, where she can do a lot more damage than a specialist will, at least mid-game. Late-game, Asmodan's probably gonna beat Hammer to it, but whatever. By the end of the game, some characters have a completely different role based on the talents. Anyway. Now, another nitpick, Zoo's description doesn't connect with the reality. What I mean by that is, Zoo is described as this hero which can de-push lanes and push them like a really strong, and the skeletons are unstoppable and whatever. That's not the case. The skeletons he summons usually die in 1-2 hits from a tower, and most of the time they don't even reach the tower. They just get shot down on the way there. And in terms of, lane damage, they don't do much either. They just, tip the scales, but only a little. I think his description could be changed, but I haven't written what it could be changed to. Probably like a deep push hero with with lockdown potential, something like that. Next nitpick, Thrall's description. It says that he is a sustained bruiser. That's garbage. No, that's not the case. What a lot of the time happens is Thrall trades hits and then sits back behind, his wall and towers and just keeps on chain lightning and feral wolfing the creeps to get his health back. That's not a gameplay of a sustained bruiser. In my opinion, at least. That's gameplay of an assassin which has the options to heal if left unchallenged. Hammer could keep Thrall away from creeps, that's what I consider a challenge, but many others won't. And also, who would send Hammer on a single lane? Why not just keep her mid? Unless they have a Stitches or whatever. So never mind, that's another description. I'd say an assassin which can recover health quickly if he has targets. And not a sustained bruiser. Sustained bruiser is a Sonya, for example. Next, Greymane. And this is a gameplay thing, not just nitpick. I think that the fact that Greymane has 10 innate armor, or innate, whatever you want to call it, spell it, whatever, pronounce it. I think that his 10 armor in Worgen form will be a problem at some point. I mean, sure, he can have armor in Worgen form, because he has to go up close and his toolkit doesn't have any healing. But why not just make it a quest? Because early on, Greymane can very often dive someone and get away with it. I'm not saying punish him and destroy the toolkit, don't make him available for jumping in and killing someone. No, he should still do that. That's what Greymane does. He dives one target, he sticks to it. But why not have him get the armor later? Give him a quest, hit 15 heroes with Razor Swipe in Worgen form, and you now get 15 armor. Because earlier, Greymane can be kind of oppressive. And this could sort of remedy that, at least in the lane aspect, and in the first, tribute gathering on the Ravenlord map. I forget what it's called. Anyway. Yeah, I propose that because he doesn't have to do anything to get and keep that armor bonus. This would reward skillful play once again, rather than just, hey, you picked Greymane, so here, have 10 armor in the Worgen form, because why not? Next. I had an idea for Malfurion talent, a talent for Malfurion, that the Moonfire, when a target has regrowth and you hit a hero with Moonfire, they get healed, the hero which has regrowth on them. I had an idea that the Moonfire heal proc, in other words activation, would activate onto hitting any enemy, even a creep or a minion. Creep being a mercenary, so a mercenary or a minion, but that the heal would be decreased by 40%. So Malfurion right now is a sustained healer, but he's a sustained, in my opinion, out of combat healer. He is very efficient in getting back health, but during a fight, don't expect him to heal very much, even if he hits the Moonfires. This way, he could be sustained. I'm not saying, actually, this is a flawed idea, because he could hit, like, groups of creeps. Okay, never mind that idea. I'll have to think about it. But I think it has some potential, because this would make him stand up to the sustained healer text or description he has. Because before he was, because there was this instant heal that was small, and then the long-term, much larger heal, but it was long-term. So the hero, your teammates had to kind of play around that they should go back when they have low health, because you can't heal that much. Right now, that doesn't work, in my opinion, because there's not that instant heal. His healing potential is much lower because of that. Now, next, I think Varian is very problematic. Others think as well, you know, other players, but I think I have defined why. The thing why Varian is a problem, you know, point A, he's very oppressive as a tank because he can dive and stay alive and whatever. But what I think is the problem is that despite being a multi-class hero, he has all talents except the level 20. That applies to everyone, or most heroes, excluding Tracer. He has all talents available at all times. Why is that? Like, if he picks the 2 blades, why does he still have shield wall available? How does it make sense? Like, I get that it's MOBA, and that MOBA can, like, bend things, and that it's not trying to be World of Warcraft, but in World of Warcraft, you have shield wall, which is exclusive, or was, in Cataclysm at least. I haven't played any further expansions, so I don't know. But in Cataclysm, it was available only to warriors which had a shield, and it was a way for them to survive. Imagine if you faced a warrior with like a 2-hand weapon, or who went blood first and has a, how much is it, 40% reduction on damage received? And in terms of Heroes of the Storm, who is invulnerable to them. Okay, he's immune to damage for how much, a second and a half? And has 2 stacks of it. Like, hello, why? He can... I thought that the purpose of Shield Wall was so he could pick it when he picks a shield only. You know, because it would support his tank play. Because if a Varian picks Shield Wall, and if I'm not mistaken the Lifesteal talent, if I'm not mistaken they're not exclusive, they are different levels, he has insane health regain potential, along with being immune to damage. Not just the basic attacks, but spells. How does that make any sense? He can stick to a target and just oppress the hell out of it much better than a Greymane can. It's like, why? Why not just make them exclusive? You know, if he picks Shield Wall, he can only pick Taunt at level 10 and vice versa. And now, Melganis. I think Melganis is a problem because he's too much of a sponge. Very often it happens that Melganis can just dive into 3-4 enemies and keep their attention on him without actually losing much health. That's point A. While also applying strong crowd control. That's point B. And point C, he can also... Well, what's the point C? What have I written down? So, yeah, he can do so without any support. He doesn't need any support. And if he gets low on health, if he's careful enough, even if there's a stunner on the enemy team, he's gonna try to get away from enemies, use the Carrion... It's not Carrion Swarm, like the Swarm of Bats, and just get a lot of health back while doing insane damage to groups of enemies. And then he can start anew. All of that while the 4 of his allies are like murdering one of the enemies because they like singled him out or whatever. He's too much of a sponge. Have you had a look at his health bar? At level 1, he's a bruiser, alright? Not a tank. If I'm not mistaken. Let me check. Heroes of the Storm, Melganis, new hero, melee warrior. Not a tank. And you know, on level 1, he has 70 health less than Muradin. A designated tank. Like, why? from what I know, from what I remember, might be wrong because, once again, I don't play World of Warcraft, or haven't played anything past Cataclysm. Dreadlords were those heroes which could manipulate the battlefield, and which could, you know, fight and then retreat, and then come back and appear from different directions and do whatever. Use trickery. Exception being the one Dreadlord who possessed Satan. He was a strong fighter. It was probably Mal'Ganis, wasn't it? Yeah, still. I think Mal'Ganis has too much of a health pool. It should be lowered. Too much. Because in addition to his health pool, he's able to get the armor bonus, 25 armor, way too consistently. Because he has a toolkit which allows him to get close to someone, stun them, activate his E, which gives him armor, and, you know, it just chains too well together, combined with his current health pool. It's just too high. No, decrease it. Why is it that high? Doesn't make much sense. It could be lower, because he has the 25 armor, and he has a reliable way to trigger it. Alright. And then there's the Abathur problem. I think it's a problem because Abathur has, in my opinion, had his damage increased over the past few patches. I don't know how much is past few, I can't define that. I think like 8, 9, maybe more. I'm not sure when was it last increased, but I think his damage has been increased. And I think it got to a point where it's too high for assassins and supports to survive. They're like, imagine a scenario where you have a support who's like 60% health, an assassin who can do, let's say 40% health. Then the support starts to get away, gets like a movement speed boost or roots the target and whatever. Before it would be that Abathur could apply enough damage to get the support down to 5%. Now it's in a state where Abathur can get that hero to minus 10%. You know, like below 0, he has that much damage. I think what could fix it is that if his skills of the symbiote form were changed, that they instead have 2 instances of damage, or 2 sources, but they still result in 1 instance. That A, they do a fixed amount of damage, lower than now, and B, that they also do a percentage of a hero's health and damage. That way it would stay reasonable for supports and assassins, and also it would make his damage sting the tanks, which it doesn't at the moment. In my opinion. Like late game it does, but early to mid game a tank won't give a fuck that there's an Abathur hat on someone, if that someone is fighting them and not killing their backline. Side note, I think Heroes of the Storm could, well, not only could, but needs more heroes, a lot more heroes. But that's just from a standpoint of someone who's playing the game with pauses and for like 3 years or so, if I'm not mistaken, and has been in Grandmaster League almost twice. I fucked up the other time. I had to pay attention to school, but the first time I did, I got to Grandmaster like 86 or something. So anyway, if you are a newer player, the amount of heroes may seem just right or overwhelming, but if you're an older player, it feels like there could be more. But I don't want to put extra pressure on the design team. I know it's not that easy to design a hero, because they have to be balanced around their interaction with all the other heroes that are currently available and such. So that's just a side note, not a complaint, just a side note, I think, you know. Now, one problem, that Oriole generates too much energy when put together with Cho'Gall. On its own, it wouldn't be much of an issue. Enough crowd control in Oriole is dead. I mean, enough crowd control in Oriole, and there's a high chance Oriole will die, and the fight is won. But if there's not that much crowd control in Oriole, there's a big chance Cho'Gall will shove aside anyone who's trying to reach Oriole or trying to stick to her. And because he has such a massive health pool, Oriole can use the energy he generates to heal herself, effectively really decreasing the damage she takes and the effort of the enemies to logically try to win a fight. Because unless there's a Tychus eating a biscuit made out of Cho'Gall's health bar on the other team, Cho'Gall is not in danger of dying for the next number of seconds. And he can actually, while Cho is shoving tanks aside, Gao can be doing damage to the backline. He's just really strong, and it's unless you really have a Tychus or someone else who can do percentage damage or has heavy crowd control, it's very tedious to fight against Cho Gao. There's another note concerning energy generation for abilities versus attacks. For attacks, it seems to be a set amount for each level, versus abilities where it seems to be a percentage, and I'm wondering why. I always thought that there would be a... I think earlier there used to be a percentage for attacks as well, but then it was nerfed to the ground, just in favor of abilities. I think that's kind of odd, but I don't have it written as a problem, so it's just a note. And we're getting on to the last 5 topics. I think Tyrael has super low damage. Later on his damage can spike, but it's later on. It's like he doesn't have enough of an impact in a fight. Other than the slow of Eldraine, his Q, and the movement speed boost of E, the W shield is... with a talent it's okay, without a talent it's trash. I think Tyrael could use some changes. Like, don't mind this first sentence. I think the problem isn't in his damage. I think his kit is old. And it's very dull. But that goes in hand with the quest part. I think there's... Scrap this. I think there's another problem with Tyrael. Other than the last sentence. You compare Yrel to Tyrael. Yrel has about the same mobility as Tyrael does. She also has more crowd control options. She has a stun. She has a self-heal. And she has much higher basic attack damage than Tyrael. So I think, like, why is that? Either increase Tyrael's damage or, like, rework his kit so that low damage isn't an issue. In my opinion, it is. Now, Hanzo's problem is, I think he has too high damage, scaling late game. But, like, he has a perfect attack range. Cast range on, or like the range on which the Stormbow can hit is another thing, but his basic attacks have, you know, perfect attack range, they're balanced, but the damage isn't. And I don't have an idea on how to fix it, because you can't increase his damage and you can't increase the range and decrease his damage. That just wouldn't work. He would just have too long range on his basic attacks. He could have pressed the backline without having to risk as he does now. Not all of the time. You know, take it with a reserve, because I haven't defined the problem other than what I have here, and I don't have a solution, so it's just a side note. A side note for Vala. I think that the fact that the Rain of Vengeance applies a stun to all targets hit, it's very powerful, and Vala alone is very powerful with a few talents, doesn't even need the ultimate late game. I think if instead Rain of Vengeance applied a 100% movement speed slow for like a second, it would be better. But I'm not so sure about that one. I haven't played against many Valas, so that's just a note. Now one of the last points, and I really thought about this one because I've even picked Oriole and tried playing the hell out of her, so to speak. You know, if you had a look at my schedule and the amount of time I spend on things and such, I tried as much as I could have tried to play Oriole until I got bored and had to go sleep because it was midnight. There's this ongoing thing between Resurrect and Crystal Aegis, the two ultimates of Oriole. I think the problem is, despite, you know, Resurrect having longer cooldown than Aegis, it's still worse. Like, why would you want to pick Resurrect if you can just not, you know, you pick Resurrect and you res someone with 50%, that's fine. Maybe you will res them with more health than they'll have if you shield them. But the problem is, you have a 5 or more, usually more, like 8 to 10 seconds of a downtime between you actually resing someone and them doing damage or participating in a teamfight again, if the teamfight isn't over. With Crystal Aegis, you can prevent combos like time-lapse and such. So, in other words, you don't have to care about having a displaced team member. If you're on the run, it's really good. You know, it's probably not gonna save the team member, but at least they won't be time-lapsed back into the group of enemies. You can also prevent damage, stuns, whatever. Versus Resurrect. Resurrect, when you cast it, you rest someone on the place they died at. Why not next to Oreo? It's like you rest them. A, they're displaced, so if you're losing, there's no way you will reach the corpse of them because you're probably on the run if you're losing. B, a resurrect delay of 5 seconds is too long, in my opinion. And C, it probably could have an effect attached, like 25 bonus armor when the resurrect is counting down, you know, before it actually resurrects the target. Or that if Oriel reses someone, she gets the amount of health they're resed with as energy, so she can heal them. You know, it's the way it's currently, Resurrect, there's no reason ever to pick Resurrect unless you're playing with Cho'Gall. That's a very specific thing, and there's already a problem with Cho'Gall and Oriel, you know? So, I think Resurrect should get like 1 or 2 buffs. The buffs in terms of effects it has, like the armor for Oriel, because it's punishing to try and rest someone during a fight. You displace yourself, or you overextend, or you're out of position. That's actually displace yourself. So it's punishing, and it would be good that it still stays punishing, but at least you don't get punished as much if you pull off a successful resurrect. And that also the hero should be resurrected on her position. And one more nitpick. Prisoner skin for Tychus, it feels like he talks in a very formal manner. He's not the, hey man, what are we gonna blow up next? You know, he's not the, I can't kind of define what I want to say here. I haven't thought about this. How am I gonna communicate it? I think the problem is, I have a problem with him that he speaks in a very formal way versus he doesn't in any other skin. Even when he's the Zerg, even when he's infested, he still speaks in an informal manner. Why does he speak in a formal one in the prisoner skin? Like, why? It doesn't make much sense, in my opinion. And the last one, which pisses me off the most. Why does Mephisto have his level 20 upgrade as stupid as it currently is? Why does it allow you to both recast and also do 10% extra damage to equal to missing health? Like 10% of the missing health as extra damage. That's stupid. There were several occasions when we actually won a fight. We were 5. We killed an enemy team member. We were getting away with it. And then this little shit just pressed the button and got a quad kill. And the 5th one survived only because it was an Oriel with Crystal Aegis, who Aegis herself the 2nd time and survived with 120 health. It's like, why? No. It should either allow you to recast the ultimate if you're a Mephisto, or do 10% extra damage. Not both. Both is just dumb. It punishes you for winning. It really does. If you lose, you don't care there's a Mephisto ultimate being cast. If you win, you're all on low health, and you manage to get away from enemies, you know, and you're actually punished for getting away from enemies and doing what you can to save all the team members from enemies that are chasing them. It's just, it doesn't feel fair. It's like, hey, he pressed the button and one member of our team was low on health, so I guess now all of us are about, if we started at 100, we're now on 60% of health. If we started at 50, there's very likely chance we're all dead. Why? Just why? Either a recast, which would be a reasonable amount of damage a 2nd time for free, fine. Or, on the 1st cast, do extra damage. You know, a recast would be great against heroes which have an evade, or time stop, or invulnerability. You could trick them with the 1st cast if you kill someone recast. Great. It rewards skillful play, timing and such. Or 10% extra damage versus tank compositions and whatever. But not both. Both is just dumb. Dumb and overpowered. right? So that's everything. If you sat through the video to the very end, I thank you for having the patience. And I contacted a person which has done skin ideas, which materialized skin ideas for me in the past. And if he responds in a positive way, I maybe will make a follow-up video where I'll present these 3 ideas in a materialized way, you know, have a physical looks of how they could look. But I think it's very likely that that won't happen, because I think these are good enough. You know, they represent well enough what I probably want to see in Heroes of the Storm. So that's it. I thank you for watching this video to the very end. If you haven't watched it to the very end, you don't know I'm thanking you anyway, so so that's it, and I'll see you next time. I'm gonna drink some water and try to rest my voice. My throat's really dry. I'll try to record the Warcraft video. Right, that's it. Later.